Psychology is the study of the mind. Psychology is often defined as the scientific study of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors and their interactions with each other, as well as the body and broader environmental factors. Psychology also involves applying this knowledge systematically to everyday life. Therefore, psychology touches all aspects of being human, as well as the behavior and thinking of all other living beings and even designed or constructed objects. Everything that has been and currently studied related to psychology can be seen as being within the discipline of psychology. The discipline of psychology includes specific psychological research as well as any research in other areas that involves thinking, feelings, or behaviors. With psychology touching all aspects of humanity and beyond, psychology overlaps with practically all other fields of study. Of course, beyond what has been and continues to be researched are areas that involve mental processes, emotions, and behaviors that haven't been explored or even defined yet. We can use the term the totality of psychology to describe all this greater area. It's exciting to imagine what else could be discovered soon in these unknown areas. But let's focus back on the discipline of psychology. Psychologist is a legal and professional term given to researchers and practitioners who have reached a certain set level of skills and knowledge in the field of psychology. Evidence-based research is at the heart of all work done by psychologists. Now, some psychologists are pure researchers, whereas most practitioners adopt the term scientist practitioner to emphasize the centrality all psychologists give to using scientific principles for all of their work. Today, the most common way in Australia to become a psychologist is to study an undergraduate university degree in psychology and then a master's degree and supervised experience in a particular defined area of psychology. There are other ways of becoming a psychologist, but they all take at least 6 years of full-time effort. Currently, the Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency, or APRA for short, the main body that oversees all registered health workers, recognise 9 areas of psychological practice. These are community, health, organisational, sports, educational and developmental, forensics, counselling, clinical and clinical neuropsychology. Psychologists with recognised training in these areas of practice can use titles with their area of practice, for example, forensic psychologists. These psychologists are said to be endorsed in these areas of practice. Of course, there are other areas of psychology that aren't covered by these 9 areas and aren't formally overseen yet in Australia. These could include areas psychologists have worked for decades in, like consumer psychology or the psychology of specific cultures, as well as emerging areas like artificial intelligence or the psychology of adapting to life in space. However, due to the greater recognition of the 9 established areas, Australian universities only offer master's courses in these 9 areas of psychology. With the different psychology university courses, there were some components studied that are very specific to that one area of practice, but the majority of their training overlaps with another area of practice. University training provides a solid base, but the experience of working in the field of psychology allows each psychologist to expand on their knowledge and skills to be experts in the areas we work in. As a psychologist's knowledge and skill expands through experience, this also results in greater overlap of skills and knowledge with other defined areas of psychological practice. That's why APRA classifies all psychologists as general registered psychologists. In fact, the majority of psychologists in Australia don't have all of the university training in one of the 9 recognised areas of practice by APRA. Some psychologists work in areas of psychology beyond these 9 areas, and universities don't offer advanced courses in our areas yet. For other psychologists, we have university training from other disciplines that allows us to bring more breadth and richness from those other disciplines to our psychological work. Many of these psychologists have university master's degrees or higher in areas beyond the 9 areas. And similar to any other psychologist, the experience of working in the area of psychology we have focused on allows each psychologist to expand on our knowledge and skills to be experts in the areas we work in. So regardless of whether a psychologist is endorsed in one of the 9 recognized practice areas or not, APRA recognizes that all psychologists have a high level of university training and experience in psychology, all with the same general psychology base. Additionally, once qualified to remain a psychologist, everyone is required to and actively fulfills ongoing professional development and training, expanding our knowledge and skills in the areas we work and have an interest in. Again, through work and additional development, the overlap in the skills and knowledge continue to expand for all active psychologists, which often results in a greater overlap of the work all psychologists do with other psychologists. As we are all human, the people we work best with isn't just based on their qualifications and expertise, but on additional factors and characteristics such as personality or whether the other can or does understand our own individual background, history, circumstances, experiences, goals, and passions. For many people, it can be extremely helpful to choose the psychologist that suits you best based on things beyond just their training base. Like all professionals, psychologists are aware of their own capabilities and limitations, and so can be trusted to refer to other psychologists or other professionals if someone is facing an issue that requires expertise beyond that individual psychologist. So whether an Australian psychologist has trained in an area of practice endorsement or not, or whether they call themselves a general registered psychologist or use another title, each of us brings a unique set of knowledge and experiences on top of the high level of common psychology base to assist anyone bring about positive change to their lives and circumstances. As the field of psychology is so broad and far-reaching, overlapping with practically all other fields, increasingly there are others without the core training of psychologists to draw on psychological practice and theories to do similar or overlapping work as psychologists do, bringing with them their unique skills from other disciplines. They can do a slice of the work performed by psychologists, and that's great. In fact, psychologists are very active in helping everyone understand more about psychology and use it in their everyday lives for greater individual and community well-being. In Australia, the starting point for getting mental health help is through the GP, who are medically trained doctors. They have some overlap with skills and knowledge of psychologists, particularly clinical psychologists. Psychiatrists, who are trained medical doctors with additional training in psychology, have a large overlap of training with GPs as well as a bigger overlap with clinical psychologists too. However, their medical training is their base and so don't have the same core psychology base as psychologists do. We are thankful for what GPs and psychiatrists bring to people's psychological functioning, particularly their expertise in medication, which is outside psychologists' areas of expertise. Ultimately, mental health and well-being is more than just about good physiology or even good psychology. That's why psychologists value all the other allied health professionals we work with, such as social workers, OTs, physios, speech pathologists, and nurses, as well as other professionals and workers in workplaces and education, as well as the communities and wider structures and institutions people exist in. Psychologists enjoy and value working with others to get great outcomes for individuals, families, and their communities. Psychology permeates all human functioning and flourishing. Feel free to contact any psychologist to assist in bringing positive change in life.